Good afternoon. Today we're going to go through our next belt, which is our orange belt material. Let's have some fun. Okay, so for the first one, which is the left hand hair grab, we're going to do clutching feathers. So of course here I'm pinning, so his left arm is coming in, I'm pinning with my left hand. It's important that I shield my face with this left check, or this left guard, okay? So as I step back, in a straight line, I'm turning and driving my fist up into the ribs, okay? A lot of the text that you read throughout the years has a middle knuckle strike here. And you could definitely throw that to the ribs. I'm not sure what the benefit of that is as far as if it would be more painful for your opponent to get hit with it, but I think stability reasons, I would keep it just as a fist, okay? So again, I'm here. Now you see my shoulders turn, but I'm still trying to keep this in front of my face, okay? It can turn out here, but I wouldn't leave a big space because the whole reason they're grabbing you is to throw a punch right at your face. You know, now it could come from the side, so maybe turning is good. But again, as I've stated before, you have to see the situation. You have to see what he's throwing. It's hard to dictate what he's gonna throw before he throws it, okay? But you'd imagine that the punch is coming straight at your face. So as I come back, I'm still trying to protect my face, getting a clear enough view with my right eye as I can. And now from here, I'm going to drag my arm across his arm. So my right arm drags his left arm as an arm drag. I'm gonna spit this out into an extended outward block, okay? But don't throw your arm way out here because it exposes all this good stuff here, right? So keep it out in front of you. Now as that's happening, I go to a forward bow and I'm driving a heel palm to the face. Now there's a couple different schools here. People will drive this heel palm straight back to the face, causing him to back way out of range, and I throw this hammer fist at the very end of the technique, and he may not be there anymore, okay? So I like to do a heel palm come from the top of my head, just slightly arced out towards 11 o'clock. It'll still knock him back a little bit, but it'll more shift him to the side, which exposes that maxillary hinge, so when I unwind, I'm shooting here with the hammer fist, the face, okay? My teacher does something really cool. Here he drops down to the solar plexus, which brings the head completely forward, which is probably the most brilliant way to do this. And now rather than the hammer fist, I can just use my forearm as I unwind right to the side of the jaw. I mean, that is such a brilliant way to do it. And I think as the future goes forward, I'll probably start changing it to that because it's really cool. If I do that to the side, again, I'm pinning tight. I'm driving here, swinging in, and now I'm unwinding. Depending on the range, I may have to shoot in with my hammer fist or shoot in with my forearm, okay? It's kind of a, you know, what's your preference? What is the range between you guys? Some people like to throw that hammer fist, some people like to keep this nice and tight and go to the face, okay? I'm kind of the school of using my forearm with a little bit of backup mass behind it. I think it's just a lot more power doing that. So that's clutching feathers. I do want to make a note too on clutching feathers. When you're guarding your face, if I take the palm of my hand and stick it to my forehead like this, my elbow goes down, there's not a lot of room here between my forearm and my nose. So if I get a punch coming in, there's a good chance that I'm going to get that smashed into my face. So the proper way to do a guard like this is to have the fingers go over the crown. So when I do that, the elbow's forward, and you can see this bone here in my arm stick straight out. So if I was to get punched, that bone will stop that from collapsing in. So I have a lot more space between my nose and my forearm. So here, not here, okay? Number two, we have triggered salute, great straight push. So their right arm goes to my left arm, okay? Now, when we do push attacks, as a beginner, we look at the concept of a revolving door. You know, let's say my arms are sticking straight out here, okay? And I get pushed on my left side, that turns my right side, like, you know, a revolving door would do. A revolving door has a post that goes straight down the center, so my pivot is in the same spot. So I would just literally spin in the same spot. It's unrealistic for us as human beings, right? I have two options as a human, well, a couple different options, but two main categories. One is to fall back from that push, which catapults my right arm going forward. But of course, I'm moving away from my target, okay? Or that revolving door can be pushed forward. So as my left shoulder gets pushed back, it catapults my body into the front. The good thing about well, there are a lot of good things about going to the front, but the good thing about it is my power is going into my opponent. Not only that, but if I step back with that push, there's a big gap between us, right? Because I just gained distance here, which allows him to kick me between the legs or kick me in the belly, whatever it is. But if I go forward and bridge that gap here, my leg could knock against his knee and it would check him being able to kick me into the groin. So going forward is obviously the better thing to do here, so we're gonna go forward. Of course, that push, I'm gonna trap it with my left hand. So in orange belt, you start to trap on the same side of your body. As a white belt, we did this, or yellow belt, we went across our body. Now we trap on the same, okay? So here, you'll notice as I go forward, I cut across the line just a little bit into 11 o'clock. Now that's if his leg was at 11. If his leg was at 10 o'clock, then I'd be going all the way around to 10 o'clock. My goal is to get my knee to touch his leg. My instructor used to call that three-dimensional Kempo, or 3D Kempo. And that just means I have 3 points of contact. And you're gonna find this a lot in this belt, where he pushes or he grabs, there's 1 point of contact. 2 is my leg check, checking right into his leg to protect my groin. And the harder you check, or if you get into a really good spot in his knee, it could incidentally check one of his dimensions. As if I'm coming across and start driving my knee into his, that would turn his width around. So you would check his width, okay? And of course, the third is the heel palm to the face. So 1 is all those 3 moves at the same time, and those concepts all in one little section here. So 1, boom, okay? Now what I want to do is shoot through my target, which is his chin. As I shoot through the target, my hand becomes a crane, and I drive my elbow down to my ribs here, into chambered position with this crane. And that's going to take his arm and yank his arm down, causing his head to come down, and causing his body to come forward, which exposes the ribs, okay? So as I come into my neutral bow here, I hit to the face, he's stretched out, and now I drive this down like a cut right on top of his bicep, or a bicep cutter. And as he comes flying forward, I make a small little circle here, my hand straightens out. Now my arm is free of his arm, and it allows me to slip this elbow. And as I go all the way across my body with an inward horizontal elbow, I go the opposite way now. So now I have an outward elbow. And from there, I do a back knuckle to the kidney. You can see my hand, I curl it just a little bit just to make sure it doesn't slide off his back, but it hooks into that kidney, okay? It's all these little details that makes us a martial artist, right? We want to try to get as many of these details as we can as a beginner, so it gets easier to insert these things as we get a little bit higher ranked. So 1, shoot through my target. This is called a hairpin. I make a small hairpin, so straight line, tiny little curve at the end, and come right back to where I started. So 1, and hook down, right? I straighten my hand, it slips that elbow in, so I'm unhooked from his arm. Slip, out, hook that kidney. And as I rip that through back to chamber, I throw a vertical back knuckle into his face, okay? Under the chin, maybe to the nose, okay? Just not to the teeth. Now, as I go through this, there's a lot of moves here, right? As a beginner, it's kind of hard to time all these different things that I'm doing with my feet. So I don't need to move my feet at this stage, okay? I'm just gonna use my hips as I turn through these strikes. So I'd be turning into my opponent, away or towards my opponent, but away from myself here. And now my hips are kind of going towards 12. I move them again, but I never moved my feet. I kept them planted there, okay? Move my hips. That is triggered salute. If I do it from the back view. Now as an orange belt, or learning orange belt material, let's say that I finish the technique, my right foot's facing about 11:30. I take my right foot, just like I showed in the last video, I cross out. As I cross out, I'm scanning the room. We start to add that to this, not only changing angles, but now we're scanning where we're going. As I cross over, I don't twist my legs because then I would have to step backwards. I just do a front crossover along the line. Okay? I look where I'm going. Back to my opponent. I step out. And now from here, I want to scan the rest of the room. So now I add an additional move to my cross out. Okay? So I go into a cat stance, and that's just transitory. I'm turning my hips. It allows me to look clearly across the room, step through reverse, finish this 360-degree circle, and now I'm back facing my opponent. Okay, so it's a cross and cover out, or cross and step through reverse. Okay. Okay, now we're in Dance of Death. Dance of Death is against a reverse punch. He's punching me in the face here, not moving that leg forward. Okay. So here, I'm going to step in. Now, some guys will throw this big lunging punch or shuffle into this big lunging punch, and if that's the case, I feel like there's not enough space, I would drop back. It's the same thing. As long as the distance is okay for my strike, and as long as the distance is okay that I hit against the elbow with my left inward block, then it works. Again, it's hard to dictate how somebody would step with that punch. In an ideal phase, we have a little bit of room between us, and I get to step in. I'm bridging the gap, because that's what we're learning here in Orange Belt. Okay? Now, from this nice 45-degree angled inward block, my right hand is by my side, just kind of like a sucker punch. I don't have a lot of time to come up and load and throw my strike. Right from point of origin, I'm just shooting a straight line, and a straight line. Of course, this is a block. So 1, against the elbow. 2, I open my hand to maximize the range of my block. And I strike to the groin. In attacking mace as a white belt, we created this neat little open-ended triangle here. It kind of traps the arm in that space. So I hit in the groin. And if I hit him straight in the groin and I get good clean contact, that would cause his body to come forward. Okay? Puts a lot of weight on the front leg, which is his left leg. So the good thing about that is when I step in, my left hand is going to contour down his body. I want to keep nice and close. And I can scoop that back leg up as I step forward with my right leg, and right from point of origin a second time, I throw an inward horizontal elbow, which is essentially just like a pivot point. I'm just driving him over his left leg as I pick up his right leg and scoop it. And now I drop down to a wide kneel stance, which means here's neutral. Wide kneel is when my knees continue in the path that they were going before, or the direction they were going, and I sink as low as I can. That breaks my heel up, but it widens my stance, and I still have a nice stable base while getting lower to the ground. Okay? The concept of the principle of motion for this belt is balance. As a beginner, we learn to keep our posture. I want to keep my weight centered above my hips. When I get to the next stage, and that is part of my training at this point, now as I maneuver through my stances and change my footwork and things like that, I'm maintaining that balance, maintaining myself centered over my hips, over my legs at all times. Okay? When I do this technique and I knock them to the ground, if I lean forward, let's say that I'm in a neutral bow, but I lean forward, I don't have really good balance anymore because my weight is now all above my right leg, which also is the leg closest to him. Okay? Now, if we were looking at this in a grappling term, where he's on the ground, he's close to my front ankle, he could easily get me into a De La Riva or some sort of X-guard from here on the ground, and because all my weight's on that front leg, he takes the front leg out, my whole building collapses. Okay? So I want to maintain 50% weight distribution on both feet, which is why I don't change my levels with my upper body, so my weight isn't distributed on my front leg, but centers over my back leg as well. So if that front leg does come out, I still maintain balance. It's easy to transfer my the 50% weight that I had in the front to 100% in the back. But when I'm leaning forward, I have to lean back again to do that. And we might not have time to do that, trust me. Okay? So, wide kneel. So 1, 2, forward bow. 3, as I start to step in, this contours and grabs the leg, hook around the thigh, and drive up. I want to grab it as if I'm grabbing like a heavy bag off the floor and I'm picking it up. And I drive my elbow across, don't bend forward, sink down to my wide kneel stance. And here, I have a whipping back knuckle that goes to the inside of the left knee. And that is just in case when he bounces off the floor, that leg doesn't come up for, some type of up kick or something like that. I also want to keep the legs wide open. So I'm protecting myself. I'm also striking him. And now it opens up my next target. So I set up my next move, which is just another loop, kind of like a half a figure eight here, as I come back down and chop to the groin. We call this nipping the tip. I'm using the tips of my fingers to strike. I don't want to get so low to the ground that I have to bend over to strike that groin because I'm in that position again. He grabs my jacket, grabs my shirt, grabs my gi, and yanks me forward. And now I'm inside his guard. Or I'm getting rolled over and he sits on top of me and starts punching me. So I got to maintain myself. So I do that by using the longest form of my chop that I can, using my legs to change that distance up and down, and just nip the tip. That's the safest area. And now from here, my right leg, as I stand up, crosses over, step to reverse, and now I've changed angle, created the distance, and seen all the way around me. So, dance of death. One, oops, I almost loaded right there, see? So I messed that up. 1, 2, scoop, right knee stance as I go down, elongated circle, chop, and cross out. Okay? You may see some of us doing a check like this during the technique. I'm going to show you why we do that. This is a brilliant thing that my teacher gave me here, which is something that should probably be in the technique, but it's not in the text quite yet. Okay? As I scoop this leg, he's kind of bent in front of me. His arm can easily go around my neck and put me into a side guillotine. Okay? Wrap his arm right around my head and start choking me. So it's a good fail-safe here by contouring the leg and shoot my arm up. It blocks him from doing that with his arm. And now from here, the tricky part is just throwing this elbow while my hand's up here. I have to just kind of come across. So it's a little bit more work to get the elbow in, but man, is it safe from that choke. Okay, so there's just a little tidbit there. Okay, now we have a right kick to our stomach. It's called thrusting salute. As that kick comes in, now take note of this. He's throwing his right leg to my belly, and I'm going to go off to 430 with my right foot. Okay, I want you to take note of this because we're going to do this exact same beginning in another technique. He's going to attack me differently, but I do the exact same thing, and there's a different result because of it. It's pretty neat. Anyway, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to exercise my double factor. So if my hands are by my side, we talked about this on the long form 1 breakdown video. If my hands are down, that means when I do a block of a kick, like a yellow belt block, an orange belt block, which is a palm down or a palm up going across my center line, a downward palm down, my hand would be palm down. If I was up like this, as he's about to throw a kick, I wouldn't do a palm down, because that means I would have to lower it, then go across, which wastes time. So because I'm at point of origin, which is another part of your training in this belt, shooting from wherever your hands are found, I do a palm down. So down, palm down is when my hand is down. Palm up is when my hand is up. So I'm going to shoot back to 4 as my right hand shoots across. If I was doing checking the storm, I'm doing the same thing, but just on the upside of my body where I'm checking this way. Okay? But I'm doing it lower because it's a kick. So I go 1. At the last second, my hand turns and my other hand makes a cross as I pull like an imaginary bow and arrow string, just like this. Okay? Now this has to be fast. Because of the attack where he's throwing a step through kick, I doubt he's just going to plan without any success in that kick and not throw a punch at my face. So I have to do this double factor in a very quick span of time because when my foot hits the floor, it needs to come right back out. Okay? So here's how I assist in doing that. My right foot is going to step back into a forward bow. If I step back into a neutral bow as I do this, now I got to turn my hips, now I got to turn my foot. So if I'm counting beats, I have 1, 2, 3. And I can't afford 3 because if he's doing 1, 2, that's 2 beats to punch me in the face. Okay? So I step back, I block into a forward bow. And now from here, as this hand blocks the kick, of course it's happening really fast, okay? Here, I just raise my leg into my kick at the same time that I guard my face in case I'm not fast enough. Remember, he can have 2 beats and I can have 2 beats. But if his 2 beats are faster than me because I'm just not as fast, he's gonna win. So I have to be smarter, okay? And me being smart is me utilizing my economy of motion. So I have 1, right away I bounce, kick, and guard. 2, my guard just so happens to be my right hand low, which turns into my offense. So when I'm planting with my kick, my right hand shoots, my left hand falls, and I heel palm towards 10:30, where my opponent will be, okay? My feet are facing 9 o'clock because I'm in a neutral bow facing the corner of the room. Again, we have 1, 2, 3, utilizing rotational torque. If I do it from the side, we have 1, 2, 3. Of course, crossing out. All right, that's thrusting salute. Number 5, we have a front right handshake. And the ideal phase of this is we shake hands, he yanks me in, potentially into a punch or potentially into a knee. He just wants to strike me by pulling me in. So he's goading me in with this friendly handshake. It's not so friendly, okay? I've said it before, whatever the attitude, so is the response. If he yanks me in, I don't want to say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. What did I do wrong? You know, if he yanks me in, that means something bad's gonna happen. So I yank him in. I do the same thing. Just like a thrusting salute. He throws a kick at me. Whatever the attitude, so is the response. My response is I'll throw a kick at you, okay? So here I'm grabbing. I'm gonna yank this hand out to my right side, past my hip if I can. As my body moves forward, it's gonna be past my hip, but that's my goal, is to get in this straight line here. You'll notice too, I'm not doing this. Because when I do this, that means my break has to go from the floor because his elbow, if you're doing this, is facing downwards, right? If I don't turn that hand. And I remember this vividly as a young Kempoist. I pulled just like this, I came up underneath, I got too excited, missed his arm completely, and smashed myself in the face with a heel palm, okay? And that's the way I was taught to do it, was from the bottom up. Because I get this nice maximum lift with my hands, so it's a great break. But if you make a mistake, your face pays for it, okay? So rev the engine, just turn. It's like I'm revving a motorcycle engine. Turn your hand. And now his elbow starts to face, from at the angle or versus 9, so somewhere on this side. So I have a nice clean break going the opposite way as my nose, okay? At the same time, I'm hopping into a one-legged stance. I'm hopping up, and my right leg leaves the ground, so as I pull, I break, and the door jam is my knee into his groin, into his bladder, into his pubic bone, any painful area in that place. And now I let go with my right hand, I push this down so we don't get a rogue hand to the groin as I step towards my opponent. My right knee will meet his knee, and my hand is already preloaded for an inward horizontal heel elbow to the face, okay? So again, he gives me a gift. He gives me one of his weapons. I get to take away his most powerful weapon, okay? His right hand, if he's a righty. 2, I turn, get the angle of the elbow, strike, break, let go, and check down. There's my pinning check, or my pressing check. I step forward, my knee meets his knee. I want to close that gap. Remember, if I was to push his knee back or kick his knee back or put my knee into his knee, if he's facing me, his head comes in, okay? So I'm using my lower body to manipulate the top half of his body, right into my short range weapon, okay? I'm always trying to think, how can I manipulate this person to my benefit? All right. I do it to the side. Cross the feather out. Gift of destruction. Okay. Let's see, we are now on locking horns. Locking horns is against a attempted front guillotine. Okay? If they gut me in the guillotine, however they decide to hold their hands with this guillotine, which is me being bent forward because either they need me in the belly, they kicked me in the groin, they pushed me back, whatever it is, I am just bent forward. Maybe I'm going for a takedown or something. I'm grabbing his legs, doing a single leg, double leg. my head's down, he slips me into a guillotine. If you've done any sparring with a grappler, you've been probably put in this position before. It's a very, very, very common position, okay? But again, let me say that this is an attempted guillotine choke. If they get me in the guillotine choke and their arms get through my neck and they grab here with the monkey grip on the bottom of their wrist and they take their back leg and they step up if they know how to do a guillotine, the first thing you do is lift. A lot of guys will lift and drop backwards and crack your head because your head's sitting in this space right here onto the floor. And you're laying on top of him kind of to the side or in half guard while he just chokes the life out of you, okay? It's very hard to strike to the groin when I'm off my feet or on my tippy toes trying to maintain my balance, especially if he's taller than me, okay? So this technique does not work once the guillotine is in motion. You have to do it beforehand, okay? There are other things we can do, like the clothes hanger technique where I drape my arm over his shoulder. If you haven't learned that, that's something I need another body to do, but if you haven't learned that, come talk to me in person and I'll show you that technique. But that is what happens when the guillotine is already set, okay? This one's beforehand. So the arm is starting to go around my neck. So this is the time to act. So if I'm here and I feel that arm starting to loop, my goal is to drive in. I don't want to let him bring his hips up to me, okay? I'm driving in with my hips away from him so he can't lean back on me. Keep my weight down. The further away that my weight is from his hips, the harder it is for him to lift me up. So I'm maintaining my hips way back here. My posture's already broken. I'm already in a bad spot. I gotta make the best of it. The best thing to do is drive forward. My upper body's forward. He can't lift as much. And my right chop goes to the groin. So my ridge hand goes right bone to the groin. My left hand is gonna check downwards at the knee. And I'm not hitting his knee so much as checking his knee. I don't want that knee, his right leg, to come smash me in the face, okay? It's not an ideal position for him to do that because his arm is in his own way to throw that knee, but maybe his knee will go to my groin, okay? So that is a check. So I'm coming down and driving here. I can't see, but I have to imagine that his groin is here and a relative straight line, somewhere on this line, is his chin. That's just called tracking, right? I assume that's how he's built. So if I get to this chop and I turn my palm towards my opponent, that gives me a little bit of snap on my elbow as I drive up in a straight line. So my head's down to the ground. I can't see his chin, but I'm gonna hope for the best that his chin is in a straight line from his groin, okay? And now from here, I'm regaining my posture because boy, do I need it. I collapse my elbow. I'm doing that as I start to move in and sandwich a strike right to his jaw. So my left hand hits the cheekbones and my right elbow strikes to the jaw. Try to dislocate that jaw, knock him out, okay? So locking horns. 1, 2, as I regain my posture. As I collapse, I'm push dragging or shuffling in from my back leg and striking in the face. And now I cross out for a 730. Doing it from the side. 1, 2, lifting my posture, collapse and drive in, cross out. Okay, locking horns. Okay, we have lone kimono. This is against a left hand direct grab to my right shoulder. We run into that same little concept here again where we're trying to realign his elbow towards the ground so I can break it, okay? So when he grabs me, if I just put my arm out to grab, my elbow is kind of at an angle here, okay, facing the angle at the floor. Now, if you were to raise underneath, it's very natural for my elbow to do this and go up like this. And if your goal is to break my elbow or, you know, strain the bones of my arm and my arm turns like this, well, good luck, because my arm is supposed to bend that way, right? So when he grabs me, rather than just keeping it here and driving back and getting his arm looped up over mine, I rev the engine again. I grab, re-grab, keep his pin down, because as soon as I put my hand on his hand, I have to imagine that he is going to do anything he can to grip fight, to get off of me. And grappling is the same thing. You grab somebody's gi, they typically don't let you grab it. They start to pull right away because they know that I'm going to manipulate you with that grab. Especially if I grab your hand and grab the inside of your cuff here, your collar. They're going to do everything they can to get it off. So if he grabs me and I re-grab, You got to keep this down so you can try to take control and rev. So I turn clockwise with my left hand. I step back to elongate that arm, and now I can do an upward forearm strike to the elbow, or you can be real nasty and bring an upward block underneath. Now, of course, I raise my arm way beyond where the arm would go, but we should always strike through our target, okay? So in the air, strike all the way up with an upper block if that's your choice of a weapon. All the way up. You see I've craned here, I've turned that elbow. And now I'm gonna drop my arm down. Now I turn my hips when I come forward. I even go into a forward bow, but you don't have to do that. Just turn your hips a little bit so I get some nice rotational torque when I do my figure 8 pattern. So my right dips out to 3, and now my right dips back in towards 9, but down to the floor. I want to cancel his height, okay? And my left hand lets go at the same time. So as my right arm hooks in and chambers into a position of whipping, his arm is clearing down towards his body and doing the same thing, okay? We're just kind of mirroring each other here. But the good thing is I've cleared his neck. So right from here, I can unwind and chop right to the neck, or shuffle in if there's a big distance between you and chop him in the neck, okay? So the figure 8 pattern here is the key to success. It's the fluid motion going from my block to my offense, my block to my offense, okay? So I grab, I curl, I keep this tight, I step back, I drive underneath and strike through my target. He's up on his tippy toes. I drop this, almost like a chamber position. I just drop, come around in a small circle, and let go at the same time that I strike, okay? If you want to make this really dynamic, when I'm breaking here, I go into a forward bow. I bring this around, I go into a reverse bow, all the way around. Now look where my right hand goes. It's all the way out towards about 630. And now when I unwind, I unleash this big old line right to his neck. Now if I add backup mass to that, forget about it. That's a lot of power. It might even hurt your hand, you're hitting him so hard. But you don't have to do all those dynamics. That's more for the higher rank, going back to those belts. So 1, 2, 3, turn your hips. 4, drop my check into place, cross and cover out. Lone kimono. 1, 2, 3, cross and cover out. Okay, very good. Okay, the next one we'll tackle is our glancing salute. This is against a right hand coming to my right shoulder. So we have the revolving door once again. Okay, we had a triggered salute where it was a straight push, his right to my left. So when I turn in, I have the inside. When he goes across with that same hand, and this is the same thing that's going to happen on our next kick technique, when he changes the direction of the kick or the other leg of the kick, but I do a similar thing, the result is I get a different part of his body to attack. So when he cross pushes here, I pin on the other side this time. And now right from where my arm is found, I step in, here's a revolving door again. I could get pushed back and lose and try striking his wrist, which isn't going to be a lot of depth up on that weapon of his, right? So I'm going to step into the attack, and I'm going to shoot my left arm straight up to the elbow, but keep it fused to my body, okay? I see this a lot, extending out. When I extend my arm against the back of his arm, if you think of like, what is that technique? Crossing talon. When I do that, he goes downwards. He goes so far down, I can't really attack his face except for maybe an elbow, right? I want access to his face. I want access to his trunk. So I'm going to keep him standing up. I'm going to do that by paying attention to the direction that I push or use my hips to push. So I keep this fuse and I keep my arm as vertical as I can and use my hips to break him so he starts to swing around the corner. So he's up like this. He arcs back. His face is wide open to me, okay? And of course, to alleviate that pain, his body is naturally going to want to walk around the circle, which is great because that's the circle I'm striking into. So he's just going to catapult himself right into my heel palm, right? So it's such a great little move, but knowing the small details of how to maximize this break while keeping him stood up is really going to work in your benefit. So 1, and around the corner. I'm getting my left leg right against his leg, so I might have to go over the center line, which is 12 o'clock. So my neutral bow is now facing about 12:30, okay? And that's okay. So 1, I'm gonna let go with my right hand as I drop my left hand, pinning his arm to his right side. And now I go into a forward bow as I drive a heel palm with my fingers facing inwards towards me to his jaw. Right here, maybe between the chin and the jaw, just smash it right there, okay? And I'm gonna hook around the back of his neck. So if you look at it this way, that my goal is to give him the biggest knee in the world, okay? My goal is to not smash him in the chin with my heel palm. My goal is to knee him. I know it sounds bizarre, but my goal here is to glance this so I can hook the back of the neck. So I have something to drive this knee so hard into his solar plexus or into his belly. This is my major move right here. This other one is glancing around just to get to this means here, which is to pull him down. So don't make that a major strike. Okay, that's filling dead space. I'm just gonna surprise him. Oh no, this is not good before the storm comes, which is my knee. Okay, and now his head is right in front of my elbow because I'm hooked around the backside of his neck. I'm still pinning down so he can't grab my groin. My right leg comes down against his leg, and my elbow just swings inwards right to the face. Boom. Okay. In an ideal phase, I'd be doing this whole technique towards 12, but because of this move right here, trying to capture the back of that leg with my knee, the technique will end up winding up going towards about 12:30. Okay. So we have 1, 2, hook. That's my goal. 3, 4, keep his left pin and drive. My legs are checking against his legs. He's falling into this elbow. And now I step out. Okay? Rising salute, we'll stride from the side. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we have against somebody throwing a big old wild right hand. Okay, 5 swords. My hands are by my side. I'm a point of origin once again. Okay, and that sucker punch comes. What I want to do is get both of my hands up against his arm. Okay, there's a few different schools. You see people going both hands to the forearms. You see some guys going against the forearm, but my left hand's shucking low. You see some guys going one against the wrist, one hand to the bicep. And I seem to change. And I realize that I'm changing depending on how somebody throws this punch at me. When somebody goes nice and easy, and boy, it's easy to get in here and chop against that wrist and have my left hand here. Because one of the rules we learn in Kempo early on is you never want to strike and check at the same area, in the same zone, okay? Which means, let's say he threw a big punch here towards my face, real high. So I did this, okay? I must be fighting against a guy that's 6'4", but for this example, I want this to be high. Now, nothing from my elbows, from my chest down is protected in any way, right? Because both my hands are here. So doing this low with a check here means that I'm protected. So it's easy when it's a nice, easygoing punch, and I can just hit the wrist, and I can check low, so I know that I'm protected low, okay? But when I say, all right, and we're in a technique line, I say, all right, let's do this with a lot of power. And you find guys, even your own size, throws a big, powerful strike, and you do, this going outwards, but he's got this big old, punch with his bicep pushing in the top of his shoulder, just driving this punch in. Sometimes that's not enough. It just doesn't seem like it's enough. I feel like my hand wants to come in and punch myself in the face, okay? So when I find somebody going really hard, I find myself blocking to the forearm, okay? So just know that you should explore this as you work in your technique lines and see what feels right for you. Everybody's built differently, so here it is. So in this example, I'm gonna go here. Now another great thing I learned from my instructor, I think it's really, really, really important, is Mr. Hale mentioned that you'll find yourself in technique lines with somebody, maybe a yellow belt, or somebody just didn't pay attention to the technique that you call out, and they'll do 5 swords. Or maybe you're sparring, and Your goal is to do 5 swords on somebody that day because it's so fun to get into a sparring situation and do that. But you, instead of blocked a roundhouse punch, they threw a straight punch and knocked you right in the face. Or again, in the technique line, they didn't listen to a straight punch and your 5 swords on the outside of his arms, he's punching you here, okay? So one of the most brilliant things I learned in this belt was a simple fix. That my right hand coming from my right side drives in a straight line, but the hand on my inside, that is beyond my center line here, needs to cross it. So my left hand is going to take a small circle to cross over my center line. Now it takes a little bit of time, but hopefully my right hand is timed with my left so they both meet in the center and clears that straight punch away. So my 5 swords, if I practice this enough, can work against a straight punch and a roundhouse punch. It's brilliant. I love it. So that's how I do the technique. I swing in and my hands drive out. Right from contact on that forearm, I don't have any time to waste because the left hand could come. So as soon as I make contact here, I have left hand contact, right hand contact, and my knee contact, 3D Kempo. My right hand's gonna shoot to the neck. If he's taller than me, he would shoot to the neck. If he's my size or a little bit shorter, then I'm gonna try to shoot down into the shoulders. I drive down or into the clavicle and eliminate some of that height in his stance, okay? So I'm driving in. And now right from point of origin, I'm going to trade places. Heel palm to the face. You notice I'm in a forward bow because my left hand needs to get closer in range to my opponent, okay? Now from here, I just do a small little dip to the eyes. It can't hurt, I'm hitting something in there, right? Hopefully his hands come up because I dipped him in the eyes and now his elbows are not in my way, right? Because if I'm slightly off to the side from him and I hit him in the face here and his arms stay down, I have this tiny little area to get my punch in, okay? Now this comes from experience because I sparred with somebody years ago and I did the exact same thing, trying to get this uppercut into the belly, and their elbows were down because they were on guard. And my fist punched his left elbow and just crumbled here and I broke my hand, the top of my wrist, okay? So I have flashbacks every time that I'm in this position where I'm trying to uppercut with elbows down. So poking to the eyes will hopefully bring those elbows up, which gives me a little bit more space, a little bit more bigger window to drive back into my neutral bow as I drive this uppercut into the belly. My hand's gonna slap off my forearm. So 1, 2, use my hips. 3, dip, there's my opening, unwind. Step back all the way to about 3 o'clock with my left foot as I'm chopping and hooking to the neck. My right hand is preloading at the same time. So when I bring this elbow down, all I gotta do is unwind and go from point A in a straight line to point B. Don't do this. I lose so much power when I chop in a big circle. Straight thrusting downward hand sword to the ground, okay? I'm gonna say this too is when I poke to the eyes and I slap off my own hand, I'm doing that not to make a cool noise. Okay? I hear people saying, oh, that's going to startle your opponent and it's going to be really cool sounding. That's not why we do this. Maybe it is for some people, but that's not why I do this. I like to think that we're doing this because if I was to come down here to check and release my hand to chop, I have to stop my muscles. I have to compress everything so my arm stops and then restart again. And that takes time. But if I just bounce off my own hand or rebound off my own body, I don't have to tense up anything in my arm. My arm stays relaxed the whole time and just shoots right back out. So it's a time saver. And we don't have the luxury of time when we're trying to defend our body. So anything that can shave off time is going to be great for us. So we have 1, 2, turn your hips. 3, forward bow. Poke as my right hand preloads. Unwind into neutral. Nice strong stance. As I get him right in the belly, his face comes down, which brings his neck into me, and I bounce off my forearm as I get out of the way, okay? I've walked the circle, I'm clear, man, this angle is right here. I could grab his head and yank him through this space. I'm not there anymore. I use that to chop and hook. So it's kind of like lance and salute, like chop and wrap. And at the same time, my right hand's raising up in the sky. This position is going to be used so many times in our system, so get used to it. And now I unwind as I drive a chop to the back of the neck, thrust him down to the floor. and I cross out towards 430. Okay, I'm doing it to the side. And 1, 2, 3, dip, 4, 5. All at the same time, hook, unwind, and chop. That's 5 swords. Okay, good. Now let's get into number 10, which is buckling branch. Buckling branch is the technique I was talking about earlier that's kind of related to thrusting salute, in the sense that in thrusting salute, he threw a right thrusting kick into my stomach, into my trunk, and this one, he changes his leg. Now, if I did the same thing and went the opposite direction to follow that leg, I would have this front side of his body again, okay? So if he changes his weapon but does a similar move, and I do the opposite of what I did before, nothing changes for me except for I have the left side of the technique to do. And I can do thrusting salute on the other side, right? I already have that technique on the right, I can mirror that to the left. So we gotta learn a new concept here. The concept is, he throws a different leg, but I don't change what I do. I do the same thing, as I've already learned. So now that's like the Swiss Army block, right? I have a whole new set of targets because I didn't change what he did. And what that does for me is I do all the same stuff that I did before, my arms come up, and because he threw the left leg, well, now I have his back, okay? I gain the whole new world, which is a place that he can barely defend because he can't see what's coming. And I take advantage of that, and I throw an upward lifting kick between his legs. So it's like I'm gonna throw a soccer ball to the moon, or kick a soccer ball to the moon, driving up between the legs, okay? It's a pretty nice move there. I would not want it done to myself. So I'm here, again, I like to be in that forward bow, or forwarder bow than neutral, right? And my hands pop up, and I spring off the floor. Because if he throws his leg and I block it, I don't want his leg to plant, and then I'm done switching my stance and kick him in the groin because I haven't borrowed anything, right? There's not a lot of opposing force. I'm just forcing my kick up between his legs. But if I can time it so where I knock his leg and his body weight, whatever he weighs, is falling to the ground, and as he's falling, I'm driving upwards, I don't know how much more that would gain, how much more power I would gain in that strike. But it's more than I had, so why not try to get that timing right so he's falling into my kick. So palm down, I'm here, my hands pop up. As soon as my heel hits the floor, I bounce right back up, soccer kick. And right from here, I switch angles, okay? I'm setting up a kick, I'm setting up a nice thrusting side kick, and I'm also setting up an escape plan, okay? So I'm gonna raise my left leg up, I'm gonna thrust it down. I like to thrust it right where the top of the calf meets the knee pit. I don't know what that's called here, and I like to fillet. Imagine that your calf, you take a knife right here and you want to fillet that calf, okay? That's the idea here, is to just slice that down so his shin would fold and touch his toes, all right? That's the idea. So 1, 2, plant, my knee dries up as soon as I hit the floor. 1, and drive that down, fillet that leg, and don't plant down. I don't want to roll my ankle, and I also don't want to hurt my training partner by accidentally falling down, which I have done before, and it's not fun for the person on the ground. So hit that kick and let that feed my escape. So I cross right over from that kick. It's easy for me to come back in with another kick if I need to, so it's not like my technique is gone because I'm escaping. As a beginner, I don't want to have to go back in. I want to get out of dodge. So I cross out, feed my cross out, and step to reverse. Okay? So we have 1, right into my kick. 2, plant up, drive down, and cross as my left hand raises up, and step out. There it is, okay? And we'll do 2 more, we'll do scraping hook. Scraping hook is an attempted full Nelson, okay? So that means that they're wrapping their arms underneath my armpits, coming up behind, and sticking their fingers, or trying to get their fingers locked in together like this, okay? The way that this typically works is somebody gets their fingers here and they drive forward. They're trying to separate the vertebrae in your neck, okay, if they understand why they're doing this. So I would wind up in some position like this, like I'm being bowled over, okay? So my goal is, now I'm not gonna have you start in the staggered stance, you're just gonna start in a shallow horse, just to begin this technique, okay? And my goal is if those hands get locked in and they start to drive me forward, is I'm gonna squat down, bring my legs together. Now I don't have to bring them all the way together, just about half that distance right here, because I need some stability in my stance, okay? Because they are driving me forward. And when I'm ready to move on, I want some depth in my stance so I have stability facing my angle before I strike with my legs, okay? So I go into just a shallower horse, and I'm gonna drive my head back so the back of my skull smashes into something, preferably his nose, and my arms drive down, okay? This way, if these are locked in, it wants to yank these apart, okay? I'm driving down on his biceps here, smash. And now right from here, I'm going to change my angle to 1 o'clock, okay? Now the name of this technique comes in a couple different ways. The traditional way to do this technique that I learned was we scrape our hoof like a bull. You ever see a bull about to take off at the, what's the guy that holds the red thing? I'm not even sure what his name is, but that's what we're going after, okay? Is that simulation of the bull scraping his hoof, okay? Matador, there it is. So I scrape my leg back. Now, we're not gonna do this. I'm just giving you a small history lesson of how I learned this technique. Matter of fact, it was the only time in the system that I was told, because I can't picture it being anywhere else in the system, that we do what we call a front bow. And a front bow is when my front leg is pinned straight. It's just a straight line, and my back leg is the one that's bent. And I cradle this tension on the ground and then release and kick, okay? But I stopped doing that because when you have somebody behind you, and let's say that I did this, but I didn't smash his nose with my head, and I get to the side and they're still trying to force their arms around my neck. And if they're driving me forward and my front leg is completely buckled out or straight, it's gonna buckle the wrong way and puts an immense amount of pressure on my knee. So I stopped doing that years ago, and now we just go from a neutral bow. So my leg is here. I'm still scraping it on the ground, but the scraping hook to me now is what happens when we throw our outward kick here to the inside of his right knee, and I don't bring this back to find my footing and step. I literally hit that knee and widen my stance and just bust the ankle. And now I have this wide stance, so I scrape it all the way back into my kick. So I get a lot more juice on this kick as I come in, kick, buckle the left knee, and again, stomp on the way out. And then from here, I cross out towards 1 o'clock, okay? Scraping hoof. I guess we could do that one more time. So from here, I'm coming up, and I'm striking back as I force down. Now watch this little cheating step I take. You see that? I don't want to be in a horse stance and drive like this because I don't have the height to push his arms down if he's tall. I might miss him in the chest if he's tall with my head. So I want to try to gain as much height as I can without compromising too much of my stance, my base. So I slide up. I don't want to be here, it's too shallow for me. So I go about halfway, we call that a shallow horse. And here, or you can call it a neutral stance, right? And I'm here. And now as I step into my kick, I don't want to do it with my front leg because now I move away from my first target, which is his back left leg, okay? So I cheat with my back foot as I step. Yeah, it takes a beat, it really does. It wastes a small beat right here, okay? But until I find a better way to do this technique or somebody shows me a better way to do this technique, for me that works the best. I get closer to his leg, I know I can see it from this point when I turn my head, and I can crack out and stomp right into my next kick, boom, and stomp. And then cross out. Okay, scraping off. Now we have grip of death, which is a left flank headlock. We explored this as a beginner in our white belt technique, okay? Where we did a check here, and we did a strike here, or a horse bite if you're a child. And this one, we're gonna utilize both of our hands to strike, okay? So as he whips me around like this, my right leg tends to go out towards about 11:30. And as I do that, I'm gonna raise my arms. So I'm on the outside here, and I get his arm coming here, but I'm behind his arm. And now I'm going to unwind to a horse stance facing about 8 o'clock. As I drive a staggered 2 punches here. So my left hand's going to one of the kidneys, and my right hand goes to the groin. Okay? And now from here, my left hand is going to snake around his neck and grab his neck. If you read any of the literature, it has you grabbing a septum, or grabbing his septum with your middle finger, okay, going up under his nose, and it's really, really painful. And it stinks when you do it to one of your buddies in class, because it really hurts them. But if you take somebody that is not your friend in class, somebody that's trying to really hurt you bad, and you put your fingers right over his mouth, there's a good chance that you're going to get one of your fingers chomped up, okay? So I just go for the neck at this point, and just anchor down against the neck. So we have 1. Snake around that neck. My right hand's already preloaded. Now I don't want to yank back towards 6, because all that weight coming down might pull me down backwards over the blade of my left foot. Okay? So I want to anchor straight down. So if anything, it sinks me down this way, which is great because my legs will check against his arms. And now I'm going to turn to a forward bow facing about 730 as I heel palm to the face. Now you see this big space right here. Okay? His arm is in this space. So it's easy for him to hook. Look at all this motion I have over my back. There's a lot of hooking that he could do and grabbing and ripping. So what I like to do here to close this gap is take my left hand and just touch my shoulder, get close to my shoulder, and look at that space. I went from all this space that he has all this motion that he can move his arm any way he wants. He can grab my collar and yank me down too. But what I do is I close this, and now he's got this tiny little space, so his arm is now stuck like this. So there's a lot less motion for him to grab me. So it's a nice safety little feature just by using what I call a funnel. I don't know what else to call this. Or a crane funnel, okay? So I'm up here. I like to be in a reverse bow. I unwind to my horse stance. Yeah, whack, driving into my body, so I have body fusion. Hook around the neck, anchor straight down as I go into a forward bow and turn my left hand into a funnel. So now I'm in that forward bow facing my opponent, and I can kick in the face and cross out if I wanted to, okay? And that is grip of death. Let's say I do it from the backside. I'm coming up, unwinding, smash, hook around, right there, grip of death. Okay, that is 12. I'm going to split this up into 2 videos, so next one coming soon.